All right, being 7 o'clock, I call the Lisle Library District Board meeting for January 15th, 2020 to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Here?
Thomas Duffy,
Here.
Thomas Hummel,
Here.
Karen Larson,
Here.
Jenny Norton,
Here.
Liz Sullivan,
Here.
Emily Swistek.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is for opportunities for visitors to speak. Do we have any public comment today? Seeing none, we will move on. Next item on the agenda was the assignments for reviewing monthly accounts payable. This month, Treasurer Norton and Trustee Larson reviewed the December billings for this month in January. Next month will be myself and Trustee Duffy will review the January bills in February. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, do you have a second? Second. Any discussion or questions or changes, comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I have a roll call to approve the consent agenda?
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the committee reports. First one is the Finance Committee.
We are beginning to sketch out a meeting, but we do not have details yet. When we do, we will report, aiming for February.
About sometime in February. All right, next one is personnel policy.
I met with the director on, was it
Friday?
yesterday? Yeah, I don't even know. Yesterday, maybe?
Maybe it was yesterday.
I don't even know, it's a blur. About 3 possible dates for the next Personnel and Policy Committee meeting. So if Trustees Duffy and Bartelli and President Hummel could, or Vice President Bartelli and President Hummel could consult their calendars, please, to look for these 3 potential dates to see if any of them work for now or if we need to go back to the drawing board to pick a date. Okay, so Thursday, February 6th at 7 p.m. Thursday, February 13th at 7 p.m. or Friday, February 21st at 7 p.m. All of them work?
I would prefer the 21st.
Okay.
The Friday?
Yeah. But I could do the 13th. That's just, the 21st would be my preference if everyone else is no issue.
Okay,
Would
so
would it be at 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock on Friday the 21st.
We could probably.
We could probably do 6:30.
Or 6.
Or 6.
That would be,
6. Did we say 7?
Well, that's what I wrote down.
Okay. We could probably do 6. We could probably even go
So you're
earlier
saying-
in a group study room.
We could,
I could get here earlier if I need to. I mean, that's not a big thing. I mean,
the earliest I could get here on the Friday is 5.
but not like late. I mean, you can't do afternoon. No.
No,
That's
just
fine.
because I have to get my kids at 2:30
Okay.
and then.
Okay, that's fine.
I could do like maybe 5:45.
Well, it's 6 o'clock is fine. We
So
don't-
6?
I just, so 6 o'clock Friday the 21st. of February.
6 o'clock Friday the 21st. We had group study room down as our location.
I gotcha.
For that day.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
anytime. we can
So
do that.
the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting will meet on Friday, February 21st at 6 o'clock p.m.
Great.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Next is physical plan.
Yes, the committee met on January 9th. May I briefly just give a recap?
Absolutely,
Just-
absolutely.
Yep. But I'll try to read it as fast as I can, but, and hold your questions till the end, please, just so you know. Okay. The agenda item 4 was the roof report, and some of this is in Assistant Director's McClellan's report, but just quickly, some of these require actions or recommendations to go forward. We had a regular roof, we had an inspection, and the roof is 10 years old. There were some things that needed immediate attention, sealing soil sacks and slip sheets, and that's all been done. We also did flashing. We recommended to do flashing on the gutters. That can wait, but I believe that's already done, correct? Didn't we? We did.
We're planning for
We're
it. We
planning
had
that,
someone
right.
here today to look at the project and
Okay.
double check, take measurements.
Okay.
We'll planning it.
And on, we had an insurance appraisal that was recommended by the auditors, by our new auditors. They appraised the building, contents of the building, to replace the contents of the building, not the land. The report has gone to the auditors. This was an additional cost of $1,800 that was separate from the audit. And we had discussed what budget line item it would be,
Consulting.
and it is in consulting. Okay,
Isn't it?
that's what we.
It will be, they have not sent the bill
Okay.
yet.
They have not sent the
Yeah.
bill. Okay, thank you. One of the other agenda items was the HVAC system, which was Monaco. We do need new duct sensors, but that would be done by Johnson Controls on the new air handlers. And those pinpoint any issues in the air handlers. Currently, the system only sends out a general alert, but it doesn't pinpoint the issues. We feel we have to go forward with this, and that proposal came in at $10,541. There's another piece, and that's the software controls, that's precision controls. That's to recalibrate all the controls on the air handlers. So they would move over their software, which is proprietary, onto Windows 10. And we do have the computer that's already been
Yes.
purchased. Then there's a building automation system, that's precision controls, that was $746. That's part of the work that will be done.
That's the calibration.
Right, the calibration. And all of these repairs, we need to go forward because it's a requirement of the fire district and the village code. So we don't need to recommend it, we're going to do it. Then we got to the FQC review, and in that report, the last 3 pages Jack itemized all of the issues and sorted them as to critical, marginal, so on and so forth. We did address landscape drainage. That causes a mulch runoff, especially in the parking lots and, well, all over, but we all think it's a reasonable pursuit, it makes sense. It's a smaller fix to a larger project. If we choose to stay in this footprint, we would need a larger study. But this fix would last a couple of years. So we would do that, weather permitting, and we do recommend doing that. And I believe the estimate was about 10,000.
That's Jack's estimate, but we would.
That's Jack's estimate.
Right, and we would go out and we would ask a bunch of people
Okay.
for quotes.
Great. So that's a recommendation to consider for tonight. We also addressed the UPS, uninterruptible power source, which is now 10 years old. We have made an appointment for an assessment and an estimate. We addressed the paging system. That was classified as critical but marginal. Current system isn't great, and it operates through our phone system. So in the event that our phones go down, the paging system would go down, correct?
Yes. And it doesn't, some of our restrooms don't have speakers.
Right, and some of the study rooms, I
Yes,
believe,
yeah.
right. And we discussed that it may not need a total overhaul, just we're hoping that we possibly can.
We don't know, we haven't
Right.
called out to some vendors yet, but we'd like to do that.
And we also came to the decision to recommend, get ideas and estimates. So that's another thing to consider. And then we addressed the site stormwater issues. The Front Street offset has been done. We're aware of that. There were recommendations to do the CIPP lining on all pipes in the parking lot. And then we mentioned restrictors, our connectors to the pipes. They also need replacement. But we decided we should hold off on that because the Visu sewer report that was done back in October of 18. And as Assistant Director McQuillan noted, there's new technology since then. So that's something that if we stay, it would have to be done in stages anyway because it requires large excavation for each area that needs to be done. So that's the end of the project reports, but we also agreed to have a general discussion about the board's threshold for addressing a timeline on a decision as far as staying in our current footprint or moving. It was a good discussion, but we really don't know if there's a way to determine that at this point because of the process with the village and so on. So should we open that up now?
I think we're going to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The discussion.
Oh, that's
with
right.
that
It's
will
right
be
after
for
this.
Number 6.
So,
Okay, did you have anything to add?
You did a great
No,
job.
no, that's right. I don't know if
I
there's
think
any
you covered
questions.
all of the topics well.
Mhm.
So,
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Are there any items, I think what Jack put in there, Jack Hayes in his FQC, was it FQC report?
FQC, yes.
Okay. I think in his critical, it was like to get done in the next year, right? In a 1-year time frame.
Well, as I mentioned on one, it does say critical, but it's marginal. So it's a little,
I think that was just for the intercom system because
Okay.
we had determined it was for emergency announcements, so yes, critical, but up to the board to decide if you want to make that investment in that decision or that.
So I guess what my question is, what did he decide was critical that we have left to do?
what I just mentioned.
Right. She just mentioned.
Okay,
Basically.
so the air handlers, did we do both of them?
They're all done.
They're all
It was
done.
confusing in his report because he split it between east and west. And I had asked you also.
Yes, all
Okay.
4 air handlers were replaced.
Okay,
And Marjorie did a good job of listing what was left on that critical list. So the drainage, the French drain, the battery backup system, and then the intercom system were the 3 that had not been accomplished yet. So I think that the committee wants to move forward on those 3 in the critical category.
okay, and is the intercom system different than the paging system?
I mean, you can interchange those words. It's an
It's the same.
alert, it's through the phone system that comes through when you hear the announcement for the closing of the library, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, and would the committee propose looking at it from a paging system that's separate and distinct from the phone system? Because the comment I heard was paging system through the phone will not work if phone system's down.
Yeah, we discussed that, so we would be receiving hopefully some quotes or some ideas about having an independent system of the phone.
Okay, so that's when the paging system breaks from being an intercom system?
They're interchangeable words, I think, right?
It's just how it's set up. Like right now, it's currently through the phone system, but you
Which
can
makes
have them
it
set
an
up
an
separately.
intercom. Right, which makes it an intercom, but the paging means it's not an intercom system, right?
I think we're
I
using
don't-
those
I don't-
terms synonymously.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not interchangeable.
We're just using like
Coming
a, like
from
a
the phone
public,
industry, I just want to make sure we get it
Okay.
straight.
just
When-
like a public address system.
Yeah, when they,
Announcement.
when we ask for bids, they're not the same. Coming from the phone industry, I just happen to
As
know
long as
that.
the end result is what we're after,
Yeah.
Got
they'll be
it.
able to tell us what it is.
Got it.
So I think we're looking for board direction, if I'm not mistaken, on a few of the items. So why don't we take them one by one? What was
I think what we talked about also at the committee is that these items will have to be budgeted for. So like the French drain, when we get into our budget discussions, we will budget for those larger ticket items such as the French drain. The battery backup we've already budgeted for, I believe, and then the paging system / intercom system / announcement system. We can procure quotes for
And
those.
stormwater is a massive project, so
The
we're not,
the huge project, yeah,
Right.
and that's,
we
we can
addressed the
budget
one
for
we
it, but we
needed to
haven't made
address.
those decisions.
Right.
You were there.
Any other questions? Good.
So you don't need any board direction, just because a lot of those, just to summarize, will be addressed in the upcoming budget.
But we'll, in our, what we normally do is we procure quotes.
Sure.
Regardless,
Sure.
as we like do the run-up to the meeting, so we're actually in the process of doing that anyway, for everything.
So no other questions on physical plant, okay? Then the next item is unfinished business. It will be facility options, department statements, board discussion, and consultant engagement. So just really quick, so at last board meeting, we asked staff for additional feedback on the facility. That information is in the packet. It reiterates a lot that has been discussed in the past strategic plan meetings. I wanted to also discuss the future relationship with the consultant because we just concluded the project exercise. The full report is on the library's website now. I would like to continue working with them, CCS, while we still have a developer interested in working with us. The director has also, I believe, recently communicated with CCS too.
Right,
Open up the board discussion.
do you want to do that first, or do you want me just to
Why don't you?
fill in the blanks?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did speak with CCS, and just to, and I think this has been communicated at our last meeting, but Flaherty and Collins, who is the developer who is interested in having the library be a part of their mixed-use concept in the downtown. They are seeking a meeting with the village and/or the Economic Development Commission. That isn't happening in January, but hopefully a meeting of that sort can happen in February. And until we know if that meeting, and what comes of that meeting, we're kind of in a holding pattern for about a few weeks. So CCS is willing to come to our next board meeting in February, free of charge, just to provide an update to see if there's any more new information from a meeting with FNC and the village. And then if there is something that comes of that, we can have special meetings working with CCS to talk about our options, and if there's, more of an incentive for us to be a part of that kind of relationship with a developer, or CCS is willing to sit down and talk with us about what we could do on this particular footprint. And we can have those as part of a special board meeting or in conjunction with a regular board meeting. And just from conversations with Mark and Graham is that they would keep to the rates that they provided us in their original contract. But that's, again, up for board discussion regarding continuing a relationship with them. But now that we're waiting to hear from Flaherty and Collins, I think it makes sense for us to at least have one other meeting with them into March, or have them come to the February meeting, give us an update, and then possibly have a special board meeting in March.
Comments from board members on what was in the board packet as far as department statements, or any discussion as far as continuing with the consultant? General
What are
thoughts?
their rates?
What are the rates?
I don't have the contract with me right now.
Was it just, I think it, wasn't it different hourly rates for certain employees?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so
I don't have that with me
I
at the
don't know.
moment.
So are we kind of just keeping it moving where we've been, or?
Which part, CCS?
Well, the CCS part, the whole staying, or at least considering moving downtown, see where the Flaherty Collins project goes.
I have a couple of questions that I'd like CCS to propose to Flaherty and Collins. The last time Flaherty and Collins, I think it was 2 years ago, tried to buy that same property, one of the sticking points, or one of the points, I don't know if it was a sticking point, but it was a point that came up, had to do with the lack of EPA remediation letters. And at that time, to my knowledge, the person selling, or the bank that was selling the property, failed to get the EPA remediation letter for either the dry cleaner that was there or for the gas station that was there. I guess I would like an update from Flaherty and Collins, who I'm sure if they're in contract negotiations, they would have a copy of those EPA letters now, or they would know whether EPA remediation has not been earned. And so I would like a copy of those letters. And I would also like to know whether or how would, if they don't provide copies of those letters, how will that impact any project we would do? Because the first thing they would have to do is remediate to where the EPA gives them a clean bill of health. And I know that at least at the Lock Former site and other sites, that has taken years and years and years.
I don't know if anybody's, I know the gas station's definitely under remediation. I think they got that little, what would you call it? Like a shed, yeah.
And they did fail when they went to the EPA.
Recently? Okay. So I'm sure it's not as bad as Lock Former. I would probably guess that. Now the dry cleaner, I don't know if anything's,
They have failed the dry
I don't know
cleaning.
if they tested. I know that obviously, as we can see, the gas station portion is under remediation. I think that's probably going to be getting complete pretty soon. Now the dry cleaner, I don't know, but I'm sure that they need an EPA remediation letter. I'm sure, and they're not going to build, and I don't think the EPA would let them build if that's not remediated. So I'm sure that's in their consideration too. But that's fine. We could have the director ask CCS. That's a fair question.
Well, if they're willing to come to our
Yeah.
February meeting,
Yeah.
free of charge, just to give us an update, I can pose that.
It'd just be nice if they came with that answer. I
Yeah,
just
oh, yeah,
feel
yeah.
that,
Right.
She could
Yeah.
ask them by
Okay.
the next board meeting. So it would be for, we'll say gas station as well as the dry cleaner. Let's see, so the dry cleaner, I don't know about if there's been anything done with that. Gas station, obviously they're working on it, so.
and I guess each of the departments gave a write-up of what they wanted in terms of either changes to this building or a new building. And what I would like to do is, I'd like to give these write-ups back to them, and I'd like them to make them even more detailed and complete. And I think I sent you this list of them, and I really think that it is not as helpful to me as a trustee to have a discussion about what they meant. For example, youth services said they want what is currently standard for public spaces. And to me, I can't have a discussion in the board meeting about what they meant by what is currently standard for public spacing, or spaces. What I'd like, and I itemized these and send them to both of you, I'd like to send back their write-ups and say, can you further define what you mean by this? Another one is inclusive bathrooms. Well, that can mean something different to each one of us. So what I'd like them to do is, from that person's perspective, since the point of the exercise was to ask each department departments or department's head what they wanted, I'd like them to make a more complete description of what they meant. I don't think it's appropriate for us to discuss it and then decide what they meant.
Can I add on to
Go ahead.
that? I think I one of the brainchilds of this last time, and I apologize to all the staff that did this. And this is very helpful, but what I really want is from the expert, the subject matter expert that is the staff, where do they see the library, what needs or what space they need 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Because the comment that we had at the last board meeting was, you know, there had been previous studies about how we needed a lot more space. But then I think I commented that, well, space is relative, as we know footprints are shrinking because of technology, but what is the kind of space that you do need? So for example, I'll just use youth services since the director's in the room. You know, what does a new youth services space look like? Like what is when you talk to the people in your field, what do they wish they had as they're going to that future point? Because we have an opportunity here to try to see that horizon, and I think that would be kind of an additional add-on to it. So it's I think it's a more fun in the sense, like, I appreciate everything that's on here, but getting a little bit more, like, I know some of the stuff we've covered, but I want to know what they want from it.
So before Will answers.
It's
just
more
on that-
rhetorical right now, yeah.
Yeah. So when we did this exercise in our department head meetings, so I tasked all the department heads to go back to their staff and ask them. And then I asked for a summary because I didn't want to supply and I didn't know that was, and I want to hear from everybody, is this the request? Because this can end up being a 20-page report. Such as, you know, define, quote, inclusive bathroom. We have discussed that in facility steering committee, and this is before some of the current board members are here. And we had visuals and examples and discussions about what those things are. We had a strategic planning committee, and we had visuals and examples and discussions about what these. We had two staff on, actually 4 staff, but the director of adult services and youth services was on this strategic planning committee. So I believe that what has been presented is, from their perspective, is that they are talking about everything that's been discussed and the board taking those comments and then making decisions. But if you want something more granular, more detailed, we can go that route. I don't think that was what I heard, and I talked about, and we were trying to understand what was being asked.
This is great. No, I mean, it's an iteration.
And we can, and so I just want to know if you want more detail, like specifics.
Well, let me use an example and Trustee Sullivan had one, so we'll still stick in the youth services area too. This would be an example for the future. There's a line: the importance of learning through active play and collaboration is being emphasized now more than ever. So when I read that, I read it as, what does active play look like in a space? Because that may mean a pretty large space. And if that's where a library space for youth services is going, then how do I translate that into the planning that we have? So that's where I don't want to I can create, for example, a youth services that has clear sight lines. That's an easy one. But if it's going to that active play, which probably I would agree with, that means the youth services maybe has to be larger in our planning than what we think. That would be where I'd want to see, what do other libraries have that have new youth services that have an active play? What is that kind of space looking like? Or what did that kind of stuff? So.
Yeah, and I think, and well, you can speak up, but I think one of the CCS meetings we had, and I think it was in the meeting room A, they did reference kind of doubling the space for play, and they were also referencing restrooms and how many restrooms are needed per certain, you know, if we were to move youth services and adult services on the first floor, if we stayed in this footprint. And we talked about like the entrance and where would that have to be to make sense for things. So we touched upon it, we just didn't go further because the board was still talking about these things, so.
So the only thing I'll say is, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, I just don't know if we're quite at that point. I think when we get into a design phase, whether it's here or downtown or wherever, we'll definitely tap the staff as well as we'll have an architect who will be well versed on this. So I agree with what you guys are saying, I just don't know if
This is the time.
Now is the time.
Now is the time.
That's
So-
fine, I mean, yeah, we
I
can
mean,
log it for
yeah,
now.
I mean, oh yeah, I mean, we're definitely, because we gotta get, at some point, hopefully not too far in the distant future, we'll definitely have to get down to the details, so. I think this was kind of like the big, general view.
Well, and the other thing is, the more that I understand how the space is used, the more that I will learn about the library and its various functions. So I don't think it hurts to use this to educate the trustees too. It's not only, this needs to be a 12 by 12 or, 20 by 20 room. I mean, I'm looking, like the example that was just given is, active play. I mean, the actual space is one thing, but even more important is a description of what does that mean? What is active play meaning? I mean, to me, it could be, anything where the child's not asleep. It's probably something a little bit more definitive than that. And not being from the library field, it would be nice if we could also understand what is meant by some of these terminologies. Because one of my concerns is that if we do everything one thing after another, the time frame is going to be pushed way out. Are there things that we can do in parallel, like learn about this, so that when it is time, we can move more quickly?
Appreciated. And I think that we try to rely on the quarterly reports to inform the board of what happens in each department, so hopefully that happens. The other thing that we can do and I can do to better inform is that I know you all receive a subscription to like ILA, things like that, but sometimes there are articles that come through that maybe I can forward to you. There's renovation additions that come through, and I can forward that to the board, and they have all the lingo in there, they have nice visuals in there, and you can see what other libraries are doing outside of visiting other libraries. So we can do that too in that kind of educational branch of.
What local libraries in our area have active play areas?
Have what?
Active play.
areas.
What are some locals that
I mean, there's
almost
there's-
everyone within?
Everyone that has
Yeah.
had a renovation in the last 10 years does. They could be small scale, but there are libraries with literally playgrounds inside of them.
She was asking
Local.
any recommendations
Oh, yeah,
to
no,
go
like
visit?
in, Geneva. I know, not Geneva.
Geneva's not finished.
I go to meetings there, so that's the northern part of the state that counts as local for me. We're all connected. We have patrons that go there because I tell them it's such a great place. And we have patrons that come from there to come to us because our patrons talk about us. I was just in Naperville today. Honestly, their 95th Street branch didn't have a great play space, but they're building a playground outside right next to the children's apartment, which I'm super pumped to take my son there because it looks like it's going to be awesome. I know Woodbridge just had theirs redone. They've got a great little play space. Douglas Grove has a fun little tree play area where kids can do a whole bunch of fun stuff.
And do they still have that kitchen kind of area
Oh
too?
yeah,
They have like a play area like with kitchen and
Craft.
stuff that they
and,
can play.
we've got our
train
kitchen
tables
upstairs,
and-
but
Yeah.
there's an entire space that's the size of ours that's just dedicated to that kitchen,
Mhm.
let alone the puzzles and all of our other toys crammed in that small space.
Mhm.
Yeah, anywhere that has had anything done in the last 10, 15 years has a space specifically set aside for small children to, there may not even be books in that area, but there are blocks and there are Duplos and there are anything that gets kids engaging with each other and with their caregivers any level above sleeping, basically. Like, active play can be anything that they're not sleeping, so.
Would it also be beneficial to work with kids that have special needs?
Yes.
Like could be kids that are on the autistic spectrum?
Yep, we work with Giant Steps. We have students from their entire spectrum of ages come in and play. We have, if unfortunately we're not able to fully serve all of them, just because that wide spectrum requires so many different activities and styles. What else do we have? We are actually just recently, SAS had reached out and asked us what we can do for them, and so we're working on getting volunteering for their older kids, and we're working on getting materials and programs for their younger kids. So, short answer, yes.
Did you have a question or comment?
I agree with Liz's remarks, but at the same time, I also agree that we need to wait a little bit closer to the design phase. And also, I think we need to keep in mind, on the three options that were presented initially on space, we don't really know our square footage. I mean, we know what the current footprint is. We don't know what we're going to have until we decide on an option. So we can say what we want, all we want. But if we're not going to, for lack of a better word, pay for additional space, it might be a pipe dream. I mean, I hate to use that word, but we really don't know our requirements yet. So I think we're getting a little ahead, and I would choose to wait till the design phase myself.
Well, I guess, in my mind, I'm trying to say, down the road, we're gonna have to make tough decisions.
Yep.
And some of those tough decisions are gonna be balancing how we use the space. And so, I guess, the more we learn as we go, the better we'll be able to make those decisions. So that's my,
Just to help us make a more informed decision
Yes.
down the line.
Yes.
So that we have the background knowledge leading up to it.
precisely.
So to help with that, in the meantime, is my suggestion, is that something you would like? I mean, you can dispose of the email or not read the email, but I can forward some stuff your way.
That'd be great,
Mhm.
that'd be
Okay.
great.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Email would be great.
Yeah.
I wonder though, if we're going to, at each board meeting, have a lengthy discussion on that before we arrive at, our final
Oh,
decision.
absolutely. I would plan every meeting with at least some discussion, but this speak from here on out.
We're not gonna talk about it. You asked about timeline, though. I guess that is a question that I've racked my brain over, because I guess we haven't really asked ourselves the question, do we actually want to move downtown independent, now that we have a little bit of information? But as you were going through that list of like the additional stuff here, this was, I think, my fear a few months back was, it's all coming to a head, right? Like, you don't have 2 years to work with the village to figure out this downtown. And I think that for us is, I don't wanna put like a deadline per se, but I think what you're asking from the facility subcommittee is, well, we gotta start doing some of this stuff, and if we wait 5 more months, it's just, and then we move downtown, we've sunk costs that we could have saved.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'll just throw my opinion to the board here, which is, I would want to see some type of conversation between the village and Flaherty and Collins over this next month. And I want to see it on each agenda until they start talking about it. I don't want it to be going 3 or 4 months down the road, because at that point, we see the play out of that. I think their answer is made for us. Is that they can't move it forward to give us the information how they would deal with the parking, then to inform us. But then I guess on the flip side, we probably owe it to Flaherty and Collins to say that if they figure out the TIF funding or how they're gonna fund it, that we're in there. because we can't let them go that far down and then say, well, now we're not gonna do it, and now their whole plans are awry. So,
Anything they have with the village or anything?
I mean, I agree. I think there needs to be a public
Sure.
meeting. And whether it's with the village and the Economic Development Commission and Flaherty and Collins and possibly the library, and having an agenda item regarding the downtown plan, I think it's imperative, as well as a parking, conversation. I don't know if, a parking, maybe having a parking workshop that includes the different entities to talk about that, or a downtown workshop. I know there's been many workshops, but I think something needs to be discussed in the public so that all entities can provide input and get it out there and hear, and then that helps us make our decision.
Another question for CCS, and maybe we wait till they're here. I'm looking at page 1 of the summary that was given to us. If we look at page 6, which is Lisle Library Next Steps, it's page 1 at the bottom, but it's page 6 where it says, I don't know how else to say it. It's page 1 at
Next
the bottom,
steps,
but it's
yes.
next step. They actually put us determining how much funding to allocate before we decide whether or not to go downtown. And I was just wondering if we should, that's the next step. And I'm wondering why they would have that step before determining whether we go downtown.
I think that's number one, because the point is, how much is the library willing to expend, whether it's a renovation or a relocation? So what can we afford to do? What makes sense for us? Either way. Is that your read?
The only, I don't know if you're going down this road or not, but I don't want to start throwing out dollar figures or dollar amounts, especially since we're still like in a negotiation period with them, so.
But do you think that's the intention of that first?
Well,
I mean, it's just whether we move or whether we stay,
sure.
determining
Yeah.
eventually how much
Oh,
the
yeah.
library can afford to expend, regardless of
Yes.
here or there.
Yeah.
Right, and if you go on to page 6, I mean, I'm concerned that we're hiring a consultant who's telling us that we should look at what our expenditure tolerance is for the project before we determine whether we're gonna go downtown. They're reversing what we're doing. And to me, I'm, if you flip over to page 6, that's exactly what they say. Determine what we're willing to spend and then determine if we're gonna go downtown. And so I'm concerned because we're spending money on a consultant, and then one of their biggest, most primary pieces of advice we're not following.
I don't understand how we wouldn't be following it. To me, as the director said, we're determining how much money are we willing to expend, whether we're staying here and renovating here or we're moving someplace else. There's got to be a max that we're willing to spend, because we're going to be doing something regardless. Whether we move or stay, we're going to be expending money. So what is that threshold?
And I guess that's why I'm saying we need to be discussing that before we discuss whether we're gonna move downtown or not.
Right, and that's why it's number 1.
Right, but we're discussing downtown, and we've never discussed.
The only reason we're discussing downtown, I think, right now is just because we don't have that timeline to know if that's even feasible for us, right? Because we're still waiting for the things to happen with the village and with Flaherty and Collins to find out if we can even do it, if it's even gonna happen. And then once that determination has been made, if Flaherty and Collins gets it and all of that and the parking, then we have the opportunity to negotiate. And if it doesn't work out for us, then because they nope, we're not doing it, we're staying here.
And to that point is that piece with a developer is that there's incentive there. So there's a number there that will benefit the library. So we don't know yet in terms of the threshold yet. It's pretty in tandem, these numbers.
Are you asking like if we were to move downtown and like CCS just hypothetically like next month said, okay, we've talked to Flaherty and Collins, and we think we could get you in for X amount of dollars. I mean, we would have to obviously discuss it as a board, it'd probably be a closed session, I would guess, too. That if we're okay with that dollar amount, we wanna get a little less.
No, I'm suggesting that they're suggesting that we do exactly the opposite of what you're saying.
It's like put a dollar amount now and then.
Yes,
It's kinda like-
as, yes.
It's kind of like going to buy a. I know.
I don't think it's
Yeah, it's
backwards.
like, do you go,
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to avoid is you want to buy a Mercedes, right? But you don't know how much you want to spend, and then you get to the Mercedes dealership and it's, oh, it's too much, and then I go back. They're saying how much you want to buy for that car,
Yeah.
how much you budgeting for your car, and then you go look at those options that are available. I agree. I think that we haven't really had that conversation about what is a palatable amount of money that we want, independent of what our options are on this table. We have ideas, we have some data now that shows kind of what a renovation here / addition to a downtown would be. But I understand the sensitivity to it as well, but I think it is one of those where, I mean, if, let's say as a board, we say, well, we wanna do $4 million of renovation. We don't need CCS. CCS is gonna say, well, that's not what we're in here for, you guys can do it for yourselves. But if you wanna spend 10 to 13 million, now you know what your options are, what's your cap? That allows them to execute that plan that you're hiring that consultant for. I mean, that would be, I think that's what you're kind of saying, Secretary Swiss about that. And it helps the timeline.
So, we kind of just good, I guess how we open with then is to maybe continue with CCS for the time being on an hourly rate, and if you want to email us tomorrow, whatever, what the rates are, just to refresh our memory.
Sure.
And then.
And they're coming free of charge in February.
Free
Yeah,
of charge
just
in
a-
February.
It's an update meeting,
And
yes.
then see how it progresses at the village, that's a big variable too. So,
Well, we have, I think waiting to hear.
yeah. Oh, sure.
I'm also changing my vote to no. We had previously voted on whether or not we agreed to let Flaherty and Collins put the library as a potential. I have talked to over 100 people who live in the district. Most of them are in Green Trails. Not one has told me that they want the library to move.
But do they know it would be part of a mixed use, or are they thinking it's a brand new standalone building?
I didn't go into details.
Because that makes a big difference.
Not to them.
Yeah.
They said, if it's downtown, I'm not going. That's all I
There would
gave
definitely
them.
have to be an information.
All I'm saying is I'm changing my vote. I did not do selling of one versus the other, but I'm changing my vote to a no. And it also was a little upsetting to me that Flaherty and Collins, one of the questions I asked was, I did not want Flaherty and Collins to put anything in writing. And yet they had an email that said, and I think it was from us, that said, we are considering doing something with them downtown. I didn't want anything in writing presented at that meeting.
But I thought I thought we all agreed that we would inform them that we were open to the discussion. I
And
think
Not
that's all
Karen,
the
Karen
email
voted,
said.
Karen voted no.
Yeah.
Right.
I know Karen voted, no,
Yeah, yeah.
But the
but
majority.
But the majority of the
Marjorie,
board
I
said yes.
specifically stated, I would agree as long as nothing was put in writing. I specifically stated that, and I can go back.
But then we summarized the
To
thought
allow them
of
to
To go in.
letting them
and
know,
zoning
and you
and
voted
present.
yes, Liz.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I
had
said
to-
specifically, I put a condition on it.
I don't
But it
recall
was just
that.
I think
I
it was
don't
to the
recall.
letter of intent, which we're not gonna go into detail
Right,
about that here.
right.
It was not to sign a letter, but we needed something to communicate to Flaherty and Collins that the board was willing to include it within the concept review. And that was done
You're
by
just talking
an
about the
email.
email?
A one-sentence
Regardless,
email.
I'm changing my vote to no.
Okay.
Alright.
just based on the number of residents I've talked to.
That's, I mean, that's fine. I still think it's the most economic, as of now, is what we've seen, at least preliminarily, with CCS providing the grant. It's only preliminary. I do think it's like the most the more economically responsible decision so far. So, I mean, between what we could get from the incentives from the developer, I mean, we have this property we could sell if we decide to go that route, and I still think it's a game changer for the community. I mean, this community's been talking about downtown for at least 20 years, if not more, and so, I mean, this would be an asset downtown. That does not mean we're making a final decision or anything like that tonight by any stretch, but I think we should definitely keep it open.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think still much more information.
Yeah,
is
we
to
sure.
be had on
Oh,
this.
sure, sure.
I think it's just one of those where, going back to the timeline, because I know I was asked, is like, that this is gonna require it has to have movement each month for us to eventually make the right decision, where we're going.
So are you saying we're gonna wait 5 months, 6 months, 7
I
months?
don't know.
Wasn't,
I think we
wasn't,
should say by June. I mean, that's a fair amount of time.
I mean,
That's
I
6
would
months.
like to think Clarendon County would get, I mean, they got a, I would say, pretty good reception in their concept review. I mean, the holidays probably slowed it down, but I would also remind everybody, when we had CCS in here, what was it, December 2nd, I believe was the date? We were all thinking they would do their concept review actually tonight, the January planning and zoning meeting. They actually, surprisingly, actually expedited. It was at the December meeting. I don't know if anybody, including our consultants, were thinking it was gonna get turned around that quick, and it was. So, I mean, when we left that December 2nd meeting, I think that was the right date with CCS, when the special board meeting, we were assuming they would be just doing the concept review tonight. So, I don't wanna say they were a month ahead of schedule, but we're probably on target what we were thinking from December 2nd. No.
mine's no.
What's the question now that we're doing?
Pretty much just, are we willing to continue just to go down continue with CCS and see how it develops with Clarendon County, just move it forward?
Well, I think it's great that CCS will come in February.
Yeah.
They can give us an update.
Sure.
If there's no update, you know, until we hear anything concrete from the village, from planning and zoning, from all the other groups, there's no need to pay them extra money for March, April, May, June, until.
Well, it's only an hour,
we-
yeah, well, it's only,
Whatever.
sorry. Yeah.
But there's no need to pay them extra money if nothing's gonna be happening in those
Well,
months,
it'd probably be
you know?
only if they have any conversations with CCS and any, if there are any negotiations between now and, let's say, February.
Well,
And
we
then-
can do this step by step.
Yeah, so when they come in here for free for February, we'll at least get a free review of what's happening, update, if you will. And I mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
I would like to think the village is being a little proactive. I don't know, but I mean, if Clarendon County also has to work with them too. I don't know, I mean, we could try to, or have the director try to reach out to Clarendon County, even on your own if you want, and just to see where they're at with their.
They're waiting to hear from the village. I just know,
So,
it's not gonna
okay.
change.
All right, so,
It's not gonna change.
and hopefully the village gets a little proactive.
Well, and to trustee Sullivan's point in communicating with other residents, again, that just makes, I think, the point of having a public meeting regarding parking issues in the downtown kind of overall plan. Having a public meeting that may or may not include a library, and hearing from residents regarding their opinions of that, their opinions of having a mixed-use facility. I think it would be important to have that. Everyone can talk to their neighbors and get opinions, but I think having kind of a formal meeting where everyone's imparting, can hear some expert advice from Flaherty and Collins, and expert advice from the library and what the library would bring to the downtown, and hear from the residents and hear their pros and cons of that. You know, I think that would really be helpful. And I hope the village takes that step.
So are we good then? All righty. Moving And the next item is staff reports. Are there any questions or comments in the director's report? Or in regards to the director's report? I'll add a quick thing. I did like the recap that the director provided in regards to the strategic plan initiatives that have been accomplished so far. I think that was good.
Second.
Any other questions, comments, or those?
I thought the director's report was really good. I just had a couple of questions. On the database usage report, it would be great if we could, I know you mentioned that these databases are grouped by packages, that's how that they're purchased. I would like to see which ones are packaged together and what the bundled cost of each package is, and then and still keep the usage cost by each database. And the reason that I'm so concerned is usage on our circulation report, usage for databases is going down. The costs have gone up year over year from 120,000 to 130,000. So I'm kind of concerned that we're paying more and yet people are using them less.
I don't know if that number scenario you just mentioned is correct. I think that you were talking about budgeted numbers, and we budgeted higher. I don't know if it was actuals you're talking about in terms of actual costs, but I can look into that. And then, yes, it is a little bit confusing with the database packages, because I know that in talking to the adult services director who pulls most of these statistics, the statistics come in different ways, but the packages are paid for in different ways. So during this budget cycle, the adult services and youth services department are going to comprehensively review and look at the usage statistics. So after they do that, and in our conversations with budget, we can come back with those numbers. Okay. And those kind of layouts.
And then on the next page, I was just kind of confused about the difference between, I was looking at the meadows and that green and yellow map there. There's a non-EXP patron. What is a non-EXP patron?
Okay, so I will answer that. I just want to talk about this very briefly. So we're revisiting the meadows, and I supplied the July report that we looked at when we talked about card use. And we chose to look at the meadows because in that previous report, the meadows was second to least, and we use the term active cards. It really means cards that are issued. And we were wondering, like, why the meadows is such a big area, why is there the least amount of cards? Well, when you overlay our Polaris ILS with the Gale Analytics product that we have, we determined we have 822 housing units in this area. So there are less homes, so that's why there are less cards. And then when we did that, we figured that at least 518 units have at least one card, which means that 63% of the housing units have cards, which is actually a great number. If your zone has 63% use.
So we owe the meadows and the columns.
Yes, we do. But it's good to do that. So now that we've overlaid that area, we can do this with the other areas and see the percentage variances. So to Trustee Sullivan's question, this Gale Analytics software, it does use Experian data, and so I have to bring us back to a prior conversation. You know how the Experian has those mosaics of different categories of population. So we've got like millennials, or we've got silver-haired travelers, and there's at least how many, 50 different categories. So this non-EXP patrons, those are possible patrons, but they don't fit into any category with the Gale Analytics. So we've got the green, which are indeed patrons, orange are non-patrons, and then yellow is maybe. It's a maybe. And again, with any of these software products, it's a toss-up in terms of really.
Well, they are patrons. The
non-XP, they are, but they can't be categorized. Correct?
Right.
Is that what? Am I right on that?
So-
Okay, thank you for the thumbs up.
Just the non-Experian, there's not enough data out there in the ether for them
Okay.
to be put into, are they millennials? Are they silver
I
haired
gotcha.
servers? But they are.
They're still patrons.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
So does this map then reflect if I combined green and yellow, that's the 63%?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then the little tiny orange dots are the non-patrons.
Right. And then there's some bar graphs, and you can see the household income is fairly high in the Meadows. The presence of children looks a little lower than I would have estimated. But I don't know if that surprised you,
It did
living in the
surprise me.
Meadows.
It surprised me. That's why I was at the first date. You said December of 19.
When did we pull this?
This-
The end of December?
This one was early January.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so then, if it's up to date, then I'm surprised.
So we can do this for all of the zones in a future. I mean, we can pretty easily do this
Do
next.
you want to do one at a time, or do you want
I think we can do this all at once. Yeah.
to? All right.
So not to be dense, but I'm gonna be dense. So if I look at these bar graphs and it says Experian patron. So that means it's a patron that can be categorized.
Yes.
But it doesn't pick up then the non-Experian and add them together anywhere? Do you know what I mean, to have a total?
Am I good to talk?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so where it gets the information for these bar graphs is from its Experian data. So if it can't pull Experian data on them, it doesn't include those patrons in the data.
Okay.
So
This
there
gives
might
us a
be.
general idea. of-
Yeah, there might be, that first set of numbers, there's 76 Gs, Experian patrons listed here. We might have actually 100 patrons that fall into that list, but because the other 24 are not Experian, there's no Experian data on them, we can't put them in those categories.
Yeah, it's, you gotta take it with a little grain of salt.
Your
Gives you a
sample
general
size
idea.
is, your sample size is
Got it.
sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the director? Not, we'll move to any questions on, or comments on the assistant director's report. None on the assistant director's report? Anybody want to add any question, comment, I guess, on any of the staff report, or the department report? All right. We will move on to new business. First item is 8A, which is appoint committee to prepare fiscal year 2020, 2021 working budget. So I'll just publicly announce that we're going to, we're gonna create as we have always done, a committee of the whole to prepare the budget. If it's all right with everybody, I think we'll just do it how we did it last year. We'll try to have our committee of the whole meeting prior to our regular board meetings, which would be in March and April, regular board meetings, we'll try to do them at 6 o'clock. Does that work for everybody? Yeah, okay. All right. Then the next item is 8B, which is LLD Friends and Foundation discussion. Just really quick, so last month, I asked the board to come up with some ideas and goals for each organization. We received communications from both organizations regarding their status. I appreciate the communication and like to open it up for board discussion in regards to either what the letters we received or what we kind of wanted from them, or what we want to, I guess, what we want from them, I guess. Have a discussion.
Would it be correct to assume from the communications that we got that, first of all, they're not going to present, we know that.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure I understand if they want to become active or continue as they have been, which not particularly active in my view. But I'm not very familiar with the organizations.
Will you give a quick,
I
Which
guess.
one are you
as-
talking about, both or one?
Well, I guess it pertains to fundraising. I'm still
yeah,
a little confused.
will you,
Did they indicate they have plans for fundraising?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the members did view the board's discussion at the last board meeting, and so that's how these letters came to be. So they did watch our video. And so both organizations want to remain supportive of the library. Both organizations want to continue moving forward with the library. The foundation is seeking board input regarding projects, initiatives, and that includes fundraising. And I understand that in the coming year, this new year, there will be some fundraising efforts. But before moving forward with asking people for support, they do want some ideas about what to fundraise for.
I don't have a specific project for the foundation or anything, but I mean, especially like how we just had the discussion about the new facility, I would, it takes a while to raise funds, especially if you're looking for a decent amount. So in my opinion, without a specific project, it probably would be something to tie into when we decide to do something with the facility. Most likely, I think youth services would be probably the best, but not that we don't have. I mean, it could be something else. I just probably think youth services, because that's sometimes a little bit easier to fundraise on. Projects that benefit youth. But we can open it up to anything. I mean, like I said, I don't have a specific project in mind, but I would probably think it would be better to kind of, as we move or do something with the facility, like with active space or something like that, we could have them try to fundraise on that. So, I don't know, any other thoughts, comments, ideas?
So when I really do thank them for writing the letters, for what they have done. I know I had a lot of questions last time, and truthfully, they remain unanswered with these two letters. I think that, and I will be blunt, I am disappointed that I would have taken the opportunity to talk and present. I think any conversation is a great conversation to have. And it's one thing to say we want them to go fundraise. We have an entity that currently isn't really operating right now in the foundation, and we have an entity that seems its main driving force is concerts. So if we went out to the community and said, hey, we want you to fundraise for X, Y, and Z, we asked them to do it, I don't even know exactly the effectiveness that would bring. Because once you go and do it, you don't want to stop it and then start it again. And again, we're on a kind of a timeline here. So that's kind of where it would have been helpful to get information. I still don't know exactly who's even part of both of these organizations. I don't know how often they meet. I don't know how much money the Friends of the Lisle Library actually has. This is not a letter. The letter does not address what they have raised. We do know with the foundation how much it is. And again, I appreciate the concerts. I have no issue with that. I don't know how much that 3,500 books, there's a sales purchase over, how many years that 3,500 books is over. Is it over 10, 15, 20 years? I mean, those are the kind of numbers I would want to know. And the reason why I've asked these questions is they are separate entities, but they are affiliated with us. We even use that term in many of our policies. And as a board, it's our responsibility to know the entities that are affiliated with us, how are they operating? I don't want us to just have them collect money, and if they're not operating the way they should, how does that work? I only can say this because they only submitted the letters, and I don't have any more information now on
I want to talk next because I want to start by saying thank you, Trustee Duffy. That was bold to say a lot of the things that were rather blunt, as you said. I might try to echo some of that in what I say, though I'm going to attempt to be a little more pragmatic because you play bad cop, so I'll play good cop. I
Okay,
guess.
sounds like a plan. I get the good cop next time.
Yes. Okay. Deal. Make sure that's in the minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we got a response at all, right? It's good to hear, and that it's clearly coming from a place of, we all care about the library and they want to continue to do things on behalf of the library that are good, and they want direction from us. And so, we're heading towards a common ground. But I completely agree with Trustee Duffy. First of all, it's hard for me, that there's so much still unknown. Trustee Duffy's questions from the last board meeting were similar to mine. It's like, and so I don't feel like we have enough information to really partner with them in the ways that we would like to. And the other thing that Trustee Duffy didn't mention that I think is relevant is, if we're thinking of fundraising as a key element here of what these organizations bring to the table, pulling the cart before the horse here, if we haven't even decided where we're going to end up, any direction we might give them might be a sunk cost, to use your words from earlier. If we did, say, plant a tree in Nancy Wilson's honor, and we planted it here, and then we moved there, just a hypothetical. So I think we really, we're a little bit hamstrung in terms of us being able to give direction because if my sort of cloudy vision of what these organizations might be helpful for us to partner with, it would be on things that are maybe more along the lines of wants rather than needs, because I think we would try to self-fund within our own organization for the needs of the library, and then these would be other ad hoc projects that would be enhancements that would be more sort of wants and things that we can really get more sort of individualized community support for. That's just my, again, cloudy brainstorming of what I think without knowing more about these organizations and how they typically function, what their purpose and what their what they normally serve as. So without us knowing yet our full needs assessment, our full budget, we can't really move on to where they fit into the equation.
Well, let me ask a question to the board. Does the board have any ideas that we can help give the foundation direction, how to maybe recruit volunteers? I don't know if it'll be board members, but probably recruit board members, and give them ideas how to fundraise.
I tried to join both organizations before all this stuff happened, and I was told I could not. And, I've read their articles, and it definitely does not say that trustees cannot join. So maybe you can join, and maybe I can't join. So go to it. Somebody else try to join.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I mean, we could discuss about board members ourselves, but I think it's probably a bigger picture, like not just even the 7 of us, if we all joined the Friends or the Foundation, hypothetically, but others in the community, it's probably better to have more or other people in the community.
I had 12 people that wanted to join, and they did not get any response from the email that I was given by the Friends group. There was no response.
The link on our website for the Friends, does it have contact information?
It reaches all board members.
For the Friends, obviously.
I think that happened since I've joined the board, because originally it did not reach, it went to one person. And it said that one person's name.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never answered.
If you still have,
That was 3 years
we could try, if you still have the contact information for those 12 people, maybe we could try.
Oh, no, they went over to the food pantry with me. Sorry, they're not available anymore.
They are separate entities. If I was on this board, I would come up with a marketing strategy to push out in the community. If my marketing strategy currently is to go to the Lisle library page, to find the link of the Friends of the Library to get an email, probably is, if I'm giving a recommendation as they're watching, is inhibiting your growth. You have the Lisle, Park District Friends Group has its own website, easily communicate, they have their own Facebook, it's social media, it's what all nonprofits now do. They have, you can donate online. I mean, I think even the donation process of this, one of the reasons why they probably, you could not currently, if I wanted to donate right now to the Friends of the Lisle Library, I'd have to send an email, get a link, write a check, and send it to them. Or I could donate to thousands right now via my phone at the current moment. Like, these are the kinds of things, if I was them providing some guidance, as you're asking, you have to come up with, you're just not penetrating the Lisle market for awareness. So you're not gonna get new people to come on board.
So the first step you're saying is like maybe get social media.
A marketing strategy would be a very, because that will also make them more effective when we partner with them on a fundraising initiative. They have built that brand awareness, and that then people can actually be aware of what they are.
I just wanted to comment earlier, Trustee Duffy, you said that you didn't know what, like when this $3,500 or 3,500 books and 1,500 items were from. It says that it was throughout the year, and the very beginning says information about their 2019 activities.
Oh.
So that whole paragraph is
Then I
about what they did in
apologize.
2019. So they did specify when that was, not for us to guess over how many years.
No, then I will easily see that. Sure.
Just want
Read the first
point
line
that
a few more
out.
times. Yeah.
Trustee Duffy, I agree with you about a marketing plan, a marketing strategy, and then a plan, and then having various items. So I think that that's a great idea. I think that's what has to happen. I also think that as I went through some of these documents, the names that are listed in there are dead people. I happen to know because some of them the library has celebrated because they were original founders of the library via the Lisle Women's Club. I mean, so I'm not sure, to understand, I'm not sure that this information is current, and I would.
Which information are you talking about right now?
Like
the letters that we received, or the other document with like the bylaws and like all that stuff?
I think it was more the bylaws. I don't know. Did anybody sign the letters we received?
Well, while you're looking at that, the only thing I'm gonna add, and I probably don't disagree with like a website, social media, and eventually a marketing plan, but I think what probably both of those organizations need are volunteers. They need manpower. So people power. So if there's a way, we could give them ideas how to recruit, and I'm gonna say right now, as somebody that volunteers for another local organization, it's tough getting members. For some stuff, for like active members.
The question I would have is, I'll be the bad cop again. What do they want to grow to be? Like, I don't want to answer that for them. Do they want more volunteers?
They do.
They do.
I mean, just from my communication with them, yes, they would like more volunteers and more interest, but again, they also just want some feedback. And I think the feedback you provided about having an easy way to connect with the organization, I think that's good feedback, whether it's a website or social media or whatever.
And like a mission statement.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be this nebulous to find information on. 2020. You got to be able to find it within 5 minutes.
Well, and nobody signed.
Yeah,
Their
I feel
letter
like
to us.
it's more intentional. There, I'll be bad cop, right? They're trying to remain anonymous. By writing two almost identically styled business letters, it seems like it's coming from a common source. I read murder mystery novels, so maybe I've reached too far into my deductive skills here, but it's just begging a lot of curiosity, a lot of confusion for me personally, and a little bit of frustration because we're trying to partner with these groups, and we right now it's we're talking to ghosts.
We have the director provide at some of the feedback that we provided tonight. The only thing I'll, yeah, it's on tape, they can watch it too. The only thing I'll still say, which I mentioned last month, I just want to be careful. I don't want to make it sound too adversarial. So I mean, because we don't want to alienate anybody too, or any group of people get off on the wrong foot. So I mean, they can watch the tape, and the director will communicate with them the feedback. The one last thing. In the foundation letter, I know that there was an application for a $2,000 grant. So depends how you guys want to approach that. Do you have any ideas for that? Do you want to hold on to that? So maybe just keep that in the bank for now. If anything else, I would prefer to maybe get some staff feedback on this for next month. If we decided that we want to go for a $2,000 grant from them right now, or the library. I would like to, if the staff could come up with some feedback or give some suggestions, not just one or two, like, whatever. 4,
Is there
5, 6.
something specific
Yeah, like what,
like the
it doesn't have to just be one, it
teens
could
or
be, they could probably spread it out over a few items,
somebody,
whatever, one.
different groups need?
Sure. So, I mean, if that would be my idea. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that. We could.
I would love it if staff came up with a couple of ideas and we picked one. I mean, I think that would be really cool.
Well, here's the thing though, that wouldn't be for us to decide, that would be for the foundation to decide who they would award the grant to. At least in my mind, they're separate entities, this isn't
What's
like.
a grant application, you're correct, so.
For us to determine though who would be worthy of getting that.
Oh, I think it is, because they ask the board and the board selects to ask them for a grant.
I just feel like that's something else than putting on our plate to do, whereas it could just go to the foundation and then they could determine.
But
I mean, that's just me personally thinking about it
so the
that way.
The way I look at it, I think it's a grant application, so again, that's why I would like some staff feedback on some ideas. And maybe collectively the board, along with staff, could, decide, and I guess we'd have to fill out the application and provide it. At the end of the day, they give the thumbs up or down if they're gonna award this for $2,000, so in that regard.
I think I just was looking at it differently,
Correct.
but.
So at the end
But
of
you
the
bring
day-
up a good
So at the end
point.
of the day, you are correct. I mean, it's their call at the end of the day, but we could, you could apply for the grant and see if they'll give it to you. So we could do that. We could not do that and just hang on to it and say, just keep the money for now until maybe we think of something much, much bigger. I don't, of course, then we just, we get to say, hey, give us all your money. I mean, so there's
I think they
there's a
kind of
couple roads to go.
indicated $2,000 a year, didn't they? Isn't that the way
No.
that they
So,
presented it?
let me just
Please.
slide in.
Yeah, please.
It's not how I
I think the
interpreted it.
$2,000 is an initial step towards refreshing the relationship. I don't think it's limited to $2,000 a year. I don't think there's any limitations right now. I think that everything's open-ended, and I think that this application was again, a step forward with having communications. And I appreciate the board wanting the staff's input. We can always provide you with ideas. We are there for you. But I think the purpose of this was to generate conversations, because I haven't heard any ideas, and I know I've heard the reasons why, but I think it was trying to get the board to generate ideas about projects or something. If there are no ideas, the staff is willing to provide them.
I mean, if support.
I think that's what the intent was.
So I guess, we get, if the board members have any ideas, that's fair game too. I mean, that's fine, we can put that on the table too. But also, we could have like board ideas and then staff ideas, and we could pick one or pick a couple and see if we get it within the $2,000 or whatever.
Well, I think staff and departments have a better idea.
Well, I agree.
What
I
their
agree. That's-
needs
I
are than we
100%
do.
agree.
So,
That's why I said
I mean,
I agree.
having them present their ideas or their needs to us would be more beneficial.
I just want to comment on the Friends letter. I know, because it feels like it, as you said, it's kind of like a ghost writing it and not having any idea. I think that there were some hurt feelings on the part of the Friends. back in a couple of years ago, and I think that the communication issues that were happening at that point in time kind of led to this feeling of uncomfortableness and maybe not wanting to come and be in public because of these communication issues that were shared with us.
Okay.
I think that
That
plays a
that's
big
your
part in
theory,
it.
or more than a theory. I obviously don't have the
personally, I
history.
mean, that's personally my feelings about that.
Okay, because you're saying there's a history, and that's why those of us who are new don't understand why this is kind of confusing.
Yes.
And do you think there's
Yes.
a history
Yes.
that's caused this kind of
Mhm.
anonymity to be necessary at
Yes.
the time that we're
Yes.
at right now?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for sharing. That helps.
So hopefully we are opening our lines of communication back up,
Trying.
and that we'll be able to work together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess what I would say is I agree with I think staff are in a great position to furnish ideas. My recommendation would be to try to emphasize ones that would be portable. That would be, that would be okay no matter what our big decisions are.
And if the Friends or Foundation want, and I don't want to be in a position of telling them what they need to do, but they might consider interviewing friends and foundations at other libraries and see what those other library friends and foundations do.
I think we've pretty much finished up the discussion. Just one thing, are we good with asking staff for some ideas?
For the
grant?
for the grant?
So.
I have an
Yeah.
idea too. Do you remember in downtown Naperville, the year that they have things that they paint every year, okay? One year they did books.
Mm-hmm.
And those books actually became benches.
Mhm.
There was a piece, it was an open book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where we would put it, but I've always thought it would be neat to have one of those somewhere on the library property.
A bench that looks like a book?
Yeah, yeah.
Question for you. Is the foundation allowed to give this money if they don't have their
501.
current tax status the way it needs to be done?
I mean, I can't speak for them. I know that when I spoke with Witzel, who is a board member, she mentioned that she spoke with council and that they have the ability to do that, but I don't know the details. I mean, that's on them.
Yeah. I mean, the best we could probably do as a board is just give them the idea or direction, to apply for that grant and see what comes of it. So. All right, there's no other questions or comments on that. We will move on to opportunity for trustee comments. I'll actually just go first, because actually was one thing I forgot in the staff reports. I was going to, in the youth services, I know it's mentioned the mini branches. It seems like they're going well.
Yeah, every time I've been out there, I've had to replenish adult books, youth books, newsletters, so everybody's included. Also, people are utilizing their own materials in there, so there's stuff that we haven't put in there, and that's the whole purpose, is share books throughout the community, so they've been working well.
Perfect. Will trustee Larson,
I don't really have anything, thank you.
treasurer Norton?
I haven't spoken a lot this meeting. I sort of a couple of things, but so going way back just to the conversations about facility and next steps, I just want to call out that I think it feels like through the discussion that I was sort of letting unfold without really jumping in, that we're collectively getting towards an outlook that we need to have a dollar figure in mind. And so I would encourage us to put those in the next conversations that we have as a board, because as I tried to think about, wow, we're these are all big decisions, and in our personal lives, when we make big decisions like buying a home or a wedding or whatever, budget usually is one of the first things you figure out first so that other things fall into place after that. So working off of that logic, I think we have enough data points. I think we have enough support from, you know, cumulative discussions and reports and analysis. I don't want us to get into analysis paralysis. I know we're going at an appropriate pace to make big decisions wisely, but I don't want us to get stuck either, because we talked about sunk costs, and you know, we also, even not just sunk costs for required maintenance that we would need to have in the current footprint, but just missed opportunities that the previous boards that we lament that, you know, we haven't been able to offer more for all of the department heads of these wants because we haven't been sure if we're gonna stay or go. So I would encourage us to make a budget decision soon, and really move forward so that we do not get stuck with missed opportunities and or sunk costs.
Trustee Sullivan.
I was talking to somebody who's in a different municipality, and they told me that, I was not aware of this, but that building a parking garage is like one of the most expensive things you can do. I had no idea that each space costs you between $20,000 and $30,000. A lot of that has to do with municipalities having to pay something called prevailing wage. And I just want us to remember that even if the garage only houses 500 spaces, it's going to cost between $10 and $15 million. And I think Flaherty and Collins is also going to ask the village to kick in additional money, and I just don't know if that's gonna be a speedy process of discussion. That's just what I wanted to say.
Secretary Swistman.
I usually talk about programs, so my oldest has gone to 2 of the teen programs recently and enjoyed them. So he's aged out of youth services, sorry, and going up into the teen stuff. So it's nice that there's still some programs that are for the teens. Yeah, that's about it.
Vice President Martelli.
Yes, I wanted to ask, I'm glad you brought up Trustee Norton about your comments. I wanted to ask you, when you have a finance committee meeting, I'm curious to see on this, what we got for tonight's packet, on page 3, the scenarios for a summary of funding sources, how that could or would relate to our current budget numbers.
That one's this one?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's 2 on
And I
mine.
think it's page 3, the cover page, and
We
then,
don't have
The-
cover
the-
pages.
Oh, sorry. Mine has a footer that says page 2,
oh, okay.
but
Mine doesn't have, well, I didn't pick up the one that had the, my bad.
the one with the header financial considerations.
Yes, so the 3 bullet points,
Yes.
the alternate revenue bonds or debt certificates,
Yes.
how those numbers, because we were given scenarios about each cost, staying,
Yes.
renovating, moving, taking on additional space than what Flaherty and Collins has proposed. So that's generally 3 million in funding, 5 million, 8 million. That would allow us to know, whichever one we choose, how it affects our budget. And can we do it? And you're the person.
Oh, honored. No.
So that's, I'm wondering if there is a way, and if you can let me know that You think there might be?
Yes, what we, without getting it too deep into the depths of my subconscious, what I'll say is I've already, from those prior meetings, got my gears grinding on what is our current economic position. You know, what, without having to make any other decisions on financing or whatever, therefore, what is our maximum piggy bank right off the bat
Okay.
without
Great.
anything else, and whether we would choose to use all or some of that
Okay,
or not.
stay tuned.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, and trustee Duffy.
So I feel kind of bad about being up on the fence of the Lisle Library and the foundations. If I was a little too harsh, I do apologize to them watching. I think the reason why I'm frustrated by this situation is just the lack of dialogue. Independent of anything else, you have three entities that all care about providing services to the district and ensuring that everyone gets access to everything. And that lack of dialogue just frustrates me, because I think all I want to do is where's the camera? All I want to do is just talk about what you're doing as an organization, so I can better understand exactly what you want from me, and I can provide any help that I can provide to you. I think that is the most important part. So I hope that as we continue, that please come, tell us about what you're doing. I'll even provide an outline of what would be helpful for me ahead of time, so that they can help educate me on exactly what their goals are. Thanks.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:36.